As a teenager, Jim Carrey was homeless and living in a van with his family. He worked nights as a janitor after school to help make ends meet. But even while scrubbing floors, he held on to his dream of becoming a comedian and actor. At 21, long before fame, Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. He dated it 10 years into the future. He kept that check in his wallet as motivation through years of small gigs and struggle. Jim finally got his big break in the early 1990s and quickly became one of Hollywood's top comedic actors. In 1994, almost exactly when he'd envisioned, Jim Carrey earned about $10 million for his role in the movie Dumb and Dumber. Soon after, he quietly placed that battered $10 million check into his late father's casket, fulfilling the wild promise he had made to himself. Jim often reminds people that dreams are worth chasing no matter what. You can fail at what you don't want, he said. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. If you've been here before, drop a hashtag Believe in the comments below so I can feature you here in a future video. And if you're new, welcome to Believe Nation, the only channel that helps you believe in yourself daily, one video at a time. Believe. Now, how did Jim Carrey go from living in a van to becoming a Hollywood icon? Let's dig deeper into his incredible journey. Even as a kid, Jim loved making people laugh. In school, his teacher would even let him perform little comedy shows for the other class at the end of the day if he had behaved. At home, Jim was so devoted to cheering up his family that he would go to bed wearing tap shoes just in case his parents woke up sad and needed a laugh in the middle of the night. He was born to be an entertainer, always ready with a joke or a silly face to brighten the mood. But despite all the laughter, Jim's childhood was far from easy. When Jim was 12 years old, his father, who had taken a safe job as an accountant, unexpectedly lost that job. Suddenly, the Carrey family had no income and no stability. They ended up living in a van because they couldn't afford a home. To survive, every family member had to pitch in. Jim, barely a teenager, started working 8-hour shifts as a janitor and security guard at a tire factory after school. Imagine going to junior high in the morning, then mopping floors all night to help your family get by. It was exhausting, and as you might guess, Jim's grades suffered badly. He eventually decided to drop out of high school on his 16th birthday because he felt he needed to support his family and because he knew his heart was set on a different path. Through all of this, Jim never let go of his dream of making people laugh. In fact, his family encouraged him to pursue it. Jim's father, Percy, had always secretly wanted to be an entertainer himself, so he recognized Jim's talents and was determined to nurture it. Even when they were struggling, Percy would drive Jim to comedy clubs in Toronto to perform at open mic nights. He even helped Jim brainstorm material for his acts. Jim later said that his parents treated his talent as something special, like a beacon for the family. Their belief in him became motivation for his ambition, giving him the confidence to keep going even when times were tough. At age 15, Jim finally got a shot on a real stage. His father brought him to Yuck Yucks, a well-known comedy club in Toronto, for his first ever stand-up comedy performance. Jim stepped on stage in a flashy suit his mom had made for him, and he gave it everything he had. It was a disaster. His impressions and jokes fell flat. He bombed so hard that he walked off stage to silence, and that failure hit him pretty hard. He started doubting if he was truly cut out to be a comedian. Most teenagers would have been crushed by such a humiliating first try, but Jim didn't quit. He loved comedy too much to give up. He went back to the clubs night after night, refining his act and learning from his mistakes. Bit by bit, he got better. The same club that booed him off stage eventually saw him getting laughs and even a bit of local fame. By the time he was 16, Jim had gained enough confidence and was struggling enough in school that he decided to leave school and pursue comedy full time. It was a bold move, but he felt he had found his calling. Jim spent the next few years building his reputation on the comedy circuit in Canada. He became known for his fearless, high-energy impressions and slapstick humor. But Jim's dreams were bigger than the local Toronto scene. He set his sights on Hollywood. At 19 years old, he moved to Los Angeles to try to break into TV and movies. He had some big hopes, but reality hit hard. In LA, Jim was just another unknown actor in a city full of them. He auditioned for any role he could, performing at small comedy clubs at nights just to get noticed. Rejection was constant. He landed a few tiny parts in TV appearances, but for a long while, success was elusive. The glitz and glamour he dreamed of seemed very far away. Jim was living in a small apartment, driving a beat-up old car, and scraping by while he chased an almost impossible dream. By 1985, after a few years in Hollywood, Jim Carrey was still struggling. He was around 23 years old, and despite all his efforts, he hadn't had his big break yet. In fact, he was broke and starting to feel despair about whether he would even make it. But Jim had something that kept him going. point, an unshakable belief in his dream. One night that year, feeling particularly low, Jim took a drive up to the Hollywood Hills. He parked on a hillside road with a panoramic view of Los Angeles spread out below him. He sat there in his old car, alone with his thoughts, thinking about all the what-ifs and failures. Then in that quiet moment, overlooking the lights of the city, Jim did something truly audacious. He pulled out his checkbook, scribbled his own name on a check, and made it out for $10 million, adding the memo for acting services rendered. He dated the check 10 years into the future, Thanksgiving 1995, if legend is correct, and folded it up. In that instant, Jim transformed his desperation into determination. He told himself that this check was not a joke, but a concrete goal to work towards. He slipped the check into his wallet, and from that night on, he carried it with him everywhere. Whenever times got tough or he faced another rejection, he would take out that check and look at it. It reminded him of that vision on the hill, that one day, somehow, he would be a successful actor worth $10 million. That worn piece of paper became his secret inspiration. Also, if you want to take real action on this video, I made a free worksheet just for you. It covers the top lessons from today, gives you space to write your biggest takeaways, and helps you build a simple action plan. It's 100% free. Just click the link in the description to go grab it. I'll see you there. For a while after he wrote that check, nothing seemed to change on the outside. Jim kept grinding away, small roles, endless auditions, countless no's, but on the inside, he had a new fire. And then, as if the universe finally caught up with his belief, things started to happen. In 1990, Jim landed a spot on the comedy sketch TV show called In Living Color. It wasn't a movie role, but it was a big break that let him show off his incredible talent for characters and impressions. People started noticing the rubber-faced comedian who could morph into anyone. That exposure opened the door to Hollywood films. And then came 1994, the year everything exploded for Jim Carrey's career. In 1994, Jim starred in not just one, but 3 major blockbuster movies: Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Each film was a smash hit, and Jim's name was suddenly everywhere. His childhood dream wasn't just coming true, it was bursting into reality in a way he'd scarcely imagined. Practically overnight, Jim Carrey went from struggling actor to one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And remember that $10 million check Jim wrote to himself? Incredibly, about 10 years later, the fantasy amount he had scribbled down became a real paycheck. For the goofy comedy Dumb and Dumber, Jim earned roughly $10 million, almost exactly what his younger self had envisioned a decade earlier. It was as if he had willed his success into existence with his hard work and belief in himself. Jim had become exactly what he dreamed: a leading man in Hollywood comedies, and he was being paid millions to do what he loved. Through all the success, though, Jim never forgot where he came from or who helped him get there. In the same year that his career took off, Jim's father, Percy, passed away. Percy had been Jim's first and biggest fan, the man who'd driven a teenage Jim to all those comedy gigs, who believed in him from the start. Jim wanted to honor his dad in the most personal way he could. So at Percy's funeral, Jim did something that brought his journey full circle. He took that battered, long-carried $10 million check out of his wallet and placed it in his father's casket. Just think about that moment. A dream that was born out of desperation on a hillside, written on a piece of paper, had finally been achieved. And now that piece of paper was laid to rest with the man who inspired the dream. It was Jim's way of saying, "We did it, Dad. The dream we believed in together came true." Jim Carrey's story is more than just a rags to riches tale. It's a testament to the power of persistence and faith in your own vision. He held onto an almost absurd dream and nurtured it through years of hardship. Even when reality said no, Jim's belief said, "Just wait, it'll happen." And he was right. Today, Jim often uses his own life as an example to encourage others. He learned a profound lesson from his father's experience. You can do everything safe and still have it fall apart. In Jim's words, you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. In other words, since life has no guarantees, why not go after the thing that sets your soul on fire? Jim's journey shows that no dream is too wild if you're willing to work for it and believe in it when no one else does. So, the next time you find yourself doubting whether your dreams are crazy or out of reach, remember Jim Carrey, sitting in that van and later on the hill in Hollywood. Remember how a kid who scrubbed floors and lived in a camper van found a way to make the world laugh and achieve the dream that seemed impossible. His story reminds us that dreams are worth chasing, no matter how tough the road gets. And who knows, maybe you will write your own metaphorical check for the future and one day be able to say that you achieved it too. And congratulations, you're one video closer to who you're meant to be. Believe. Now let's learn the incredible story of Sylvester Stallone and Rocky. In the early 1970s, Sylvester Stallone was a broke, struggling actor with a baby on the way. He was so desperate for cash that he sold his beloved bull mastiff Butkus for about $40 because he couldn't afford dog food. It was the lowest point of his life. With nothing left to lose, Stallone locked himself in a tiny apartment and feverishly wrote a movie script about an underdog boxer named Rocky. Studios offered to buy the script, but refused to cast Stallone in the lead. He refused to sell unless he could star as Rocky. Many thought he was crazy for turning down money when he was nearly homeless. Eventually, one small studio agreed to let him play the lead. Rocky, in 1976, became a Hollywood triumph, winning Oscars and launching Stallone's career. With his first paycheck, Stallone tracked down the man who bought Butkus and paid $15,000 to buy his dog back. Butkus even got a role in the Rocky film. It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Sylvester Stallone. Believe in yourself and never abandon those who helped you along the way up. Lesson number 1, believe in yourself. Stallone's story shows the power of believing in yourself and your dream. Even when everyone doubted him, he never lost faith. In fact, at one point, he had only about $100 left in his bank account and a baby on the way. Yet he turned down a $360,000 offer for his Rocky script because the buyers wouldn't let him star in it. Think about that. He was down to his last few dollars, but he refused to sell his story if it meant giving up his dream role. That kind of self-belief is rare and powerful, and it paid off. The film that no one wanted him to star in ended up winning 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. If Stallone had given in or doubted himself, Rocky might never have happened. So the lesson here is believe in your own vision when no one else does. Bet on yourself, because if you don't, who will? Lesson number 2, work hard and sacrifice for your dream. Big dreams require big hard work and sacrifice. Stallone didn't get lucky. He worked tirelessly for his success. He locked himself away and poured his soul into writing the Rocky script, famously writing 90 pages in just 3 days. He was living in a tiny apartment, practically broke and hungry. He even had to part with his beloved dog just to survive. He and his wife were willing to live with nothing if that's what it took. Stallone even said he'd rather bury his script in the backyard than sell it, and his wife agreed. They'd live in a trailer in a swamp if needed. That's how committed he was. Most people aren't willing to give up their comfort, but Stallone's sacrifice shows that you have to be fully committed to your dream. Whether it's long hours, late nights, or giving up something you love for a while, success comes at a price. When you're chasing a goal, be prepared to work harder than everyone else and make tough choices. It will be difficult, but that dedication can set you apart from everyone else. Lesson number 3, keep moving forward. Stallone's journey is a lesson in perseverance. He faced rejection and hardship over and over again. Many studios told him no. People thought he was crazy. He was so broke he could barely afford food. Life hit him with everything it had. But like Rocky Balboa in the film, Stallone knew something important. It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up. He kept knocking on doors until one finally opened. He didn't let the early rejection stop him. Instead, each no just made him more determined. Stallone kept moving forward no matter what. This is the idea behind Rocky's famous quote, "It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." He lived that message for real. The truth is, you will face hits in life. Failures, losses, people doubting you. But if you keep pushing ahead after every setback, you haven't truly lost. Stallone went from sleeping in a tiny apartment to walking on stage at the Oscars, all because he never gave up. So, when life knocks you down, remember, dust yourself up. Keep moving forward towards your goal. Lesson number 4, stay loyal and grateful. Through it all, Stallone never forgot those who helped him or were loyal to him. When he finally found success, he didn't abandon the friends or even the pets who stood by him in the hard times. The moment he got paid, his first mission was to buy back Butkus, the dog who had been his companion during his hardest years, and Stallone actually pleaded with the dog's new owner to get him back. He said Butkus had suffered along with me for 2 years and belonged in the movie. He paid a huge sum to reunite with his old friend. He later said Butkus was worth every penny. Butkus got to appear in Rocky and share in Stallone's triumph. This shows Stallone's loyalty and gratitude. He didn't view success as a solo journey. He remembered those who were there when he had nothing. In our own lives, it's important to do the same. No one achieves success completely alone. There are always supporters, mentors, friends, or family who've helped along the way. When you reach your goals, thank the people, and yes, even the pets who supported you. Stay humble and loyal to those who believed in you before the world did. Sylvester Stallone's story proves that an underdog can win through belief, hard work, perseverance, and gratitude. His life teaches us to believe in ourselves, work hard for our dreams, never give up no matter how hard life hits us, and stay grateful to those who help us. You may not be writing a Hollywood script, but you are writing your own life story. So keep pushing forward with your dream, even when it's tough. And one day, you could be the one celebrating a hard-earned victory. Now let's learn from the 9 celebrities like Lady Gaga who risked it all to chase their dream. Nobody ever achieved their dreams by playing it safe. I've seen it again and again. The people who reach the top are the ones who are willing to leap when everyone else clung to the edge. If you never dare to pursue what you love, you'll spend the rest of your life haunted by regret, knowing you let fear stop you from becoming the person you were meant to be. Lady Gaga was no overnight sensation. She bet everything on herself long before the world knew her name. At 19, she dropped out of a top university to chase a music career, working 3 day jobs just to survive. Soon, her gamble seemed to pay off. She landed a record deal, but 3 months later, the label dropped her. Gaga was devastated. That Christmas, she moved back into her childhood home in tears. Everything in her screamed that she'd failed, but instead of giving up, she doubled down on her dream. She hit the grimy New York clubs and burlesque shows that finally let her unleash her authentic self. There, amid the dive bars and drag queens, she honed the fearless persona that we now know. And it was in one of those clubs that she got her next big break. R&B star Akon saw her perform and signed her to an Interscope imprint. By 2008, Lady Gaga's debut album was a global smash, and the world recognized a star had been born. But remember this, when she was dropped by that first label, Gaga felt the same crushing doubt you feel when your dreams get rejected. She faced the same pressure to quit that you might be facing right now. The only difference is she didn't quit. She felt the fear and kept going anyway, and that made all the difference. When I was 19, I had to make the hard decision of my life. I had dream job offers waiting, jobs I'd wanted all through college, and I turned them all down. Instead, I agreed to take 30% of a struggling startup and pay myself just $300 a month. I was supposed to be a banker, not an entrepreneur living on ramen and hope. I was terrified, but I said yes to the startup, and it absolutely did not go as planned. We sucked at the start. We failed over and over, and those failures drove me into the lowest point of my life. After continuing to look at my empty bank account, I finally broke. One day, I told my business partner, I'm done. I quit. I felt like I'd wasted a year of my life and had nothing to show but fear and shame. The next night was the worst of my life, but the next morning, something in me flipped. I realized I could handle failing, but I could not handle giving up on my dream. If I quit now, I'd always wonder what might have been. So I decided to give it one more shot. But this time I tried something different. I read how Bill Gates made his first million and discovered his strategy of partnering to sell software. So why not model it, I thought. I went back to my partner, yes, after quitting the day before, and we refocused our approach. I started reaching out to potential partners, trying to sell through them instead of all alone. And within a few weeks, I closed my first major deal. Everything began to turn around. That tiny company I joined at $300 a month grew to over 300 customers in 30 countries, and we got acquired. None of that would have happened if I hadn't made one gutsy decision under pressure: to press on just a little bit longer when every fiber of my being wanted to run. I was scared, I hesitated, and I acted anyway. And that made me who I am today. Now, you might be thinking, sure, this all sounds great for them, but I just can't risk everything like that. I have responsibilities. I'm not Lady Gaga or Elon Musk. I'm just me. Maybe you have a family to support or a mortgage to pay. Maybe you're telling yourself you're just not talented enough. You're not lucky enough, not something enough to pull it off. Listen, that voice is lying to you. Every one of the people that I'll talk about here, they felt the fear. They had doubts. They had people telling them they were crazy, but they didn't let that stop them, and neither can you. In fact, the riskiest thing you can do is play it safe. Mark Zuckerberg, who built Facebook, said it best. In a world that's changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. If you freeze and you do nothing, you're virtually guaranteeing that nothing will change. And years from now, do you know what hurts more than failure? Regret. Psychologists have found that when people look back on their lives, they regret the chances they didn't take far more than the ones they did. So yes, you might fail if you go after your dream, but if you don't even try, you'll live with regret. Which one do you think is worse? The pressure you're feeling right now, that knot in your stomach, it's not there to hold you back. It's there to push you forward. So let's push forward together. Okay, you've seen how Lady Gaga put it all on the line for her passion. She is far from alone. Now let's dive into nine more incredible people who risked it all to chase their dreams and see what you can learn from each of them. Sylvester Stallone, betting on himself when it mattered most. In the mid-1970s, Sylvester Stallone was a broke, struggling actor with a paralyzed slur to his voice and barely $100 in his bank account. He had to sell his dog to buy food, but Stallone had one thing going for him, a script he'd written in a fever of inspiration, the story of an underdog boxer named Rocky. When Hollywood producers read Rocky, they loved it. They offered Stallone $300,000 for the script, an unheard of sum for an unknown writer. There was just one catch. They wanted a famous actor, not Stallone, to play the lead. This moment right here, that was Stallone's crossroads. He had nothing, no money, no security, yet he refused to sell his story unless he could star in it as Rocky. The studio kept upping the offer all the way to $350,000. Stallone still said no. Imagine that. He's practically homeless, but he walks away from a small fortune on principle. He later said, "You just roll the dice and fly by the seat of your pants." That's exactly what he did. Ultimately, the producers caved. They paid Stallone a fraction of their original offer, $35,000, and let him play Rocky. Stallone poured every ounce of his soul into that film. And we know how the story ends. Rocky became an Oscar-winning smash hit, grossing over $225 million. It turned Sylvester Stallone, the starving actor who bet on himself, into a Hollywood legend. Now think about what you can take from this. Stallone literally had nothing to lose except his dream, and he protected that dream with everything he had. Are you protecting your dream that fiercely? Number 2, Beyonce, daring to break all the rules. In December 2013, at the peak of her career, Beyonce did something that shocked the entire music industry. Without a whisper of warning, no marketing, no singles on the radio, she dropped a full surprise album on iTunes overnight. The move defied every traditional rule of music promotion, and Beyonce was terrified about it. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I already imagined the worst that could happen." Releasing an album with zero promotion was a huge risk, even for Queen Bey. Industry's experts called it career suicide. Harvard Business School even wrote a case study on what a gamble it was. Why did she do it? Because Beyonce felt creatively suffocated by the old way of doing things. She wanted to reclaim her power on her terms. In her own words, she wanted to show other women, you don't have to go sign with someone else. You can do it yourself. So she trusted her gut and jumped. The result? Her self-titled album broke records, racing up to number 1 on the US and proving all the skeptics wrong. It was a cultural earthquake that changed how albums could be released. More importantly, it taught millions of entrepreneurs and creators that sometimes the boldest, scariest move is the one that sets you free. Beyonce was already a superstar, but with that single daring act, she went from superstar to icon because she owned her vision completely. So ask yourself, where are you playing by others' rules? Maybe your breakthrough lies in trusting your own. Number 3. Elon Musk, going all in, literally. Elon Musk's risk-taking is the stuff of Silicon Valley legend. After selling his company, PayPal, in 2002, Musk personally made $180 million from the deal. He could have retired at 31. Instead, he risked every cent of it on 2 wild dreams: SpaceX, a private rocket company, and Tesla, an electric car startup. Friends told him he was crazy. Why not just invest a little and keep a safety net? But Musk poured all of his PayPal fortune into these 2 ventures. By 2008, both companies were on the brink of bankruptcy. The global economy was crashing, and Musk himself was broke to boot, as he later recalled. He had to borrow money for rent that Christmas. "It was the worst year of my life," he said. Think about that. a multi-millionaire reduced to scrounging, all because he believed so fiercely in his dreams of space travel and sustainable transport. Musk had one rocket launch before SpaceX would run out of money. If that launch failed, it was game over. They launched, and it succeeded. SpaceX hit orbit for the first time. Just weeks later, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract, saving the company. Around the same time, Tesla secured critical funding to stay alive. By the skin of his teeth, Musk's all-in bet paid off. Today, SpaceX routinely sends rockets to space, and Tesla is a household name, together worth over $1 trillion. But it all traced back to that moment when Elon Musk put everything on the line. The takeaway here isn't be reckless with your money, it's have skin in the game. Musk was so invested, literally, that failure was not an option. He worked night and day, slept under his desk, and did whatever it took. When you treat your dream like your life depends on it, powerful things happen. Number 4. J.K. Rowling, turning rock bottom into a launchpad. Joanne J.K. Rowling knows about risk on a very personal level. In the early 1990s, she was a single mother living on welfare, battling depression, and writing stories in Edinburgh cafes because she couldn't afford heat at home. She had no stable job, no spouse, and barely enough money to feed her baby. Chasing a fantasy of becoming a novelist seemed to outsiders utterly impractical. She spent years crafting Harry Potter under these conditions. That was her risk, devoting what little time and energy had to a dream that no one else believed in. And initially, it looked like a pretty bad bet. 12 different publishers rejected Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. 12 no's in a row. Any one of those could have been the moment she quit. Can you imagine? You're exhausted, living on government assistance, and a dozen publishers slam the door in your face. It would have been easy to say, I tried, it didn't work, I need to get real. But J.K. Rowling refused to give up. I never really gave up on Harry, she said, because I always had a tiny, stubborn core that believed I was meant to be a writer. Finally, a small publisher, Bloomsbury, took a chance on her manuscript, and we all know what happens next. Harry Potter became a once-in-a-century phenomenon, making Rowling the world's first billionaire author. The key here is that she risked continued failure and hardship in the short term for a chance at a massively different future. She literally bet years of her life on a story about a boy wizard, and the bet transformed her life and millions of others. If you're hesitating because the odds look bad or people scoff at your idea, remember, Rowling writing in that cafe. Remember that every single no is one step closer to yes, as long as you keep knocking on doors. Number 5, Walt Disney, betting his home on his vision. Walt Disney is now synonymous with magical success, but in 1937, he was on the verge of losing everything for his dream. Disney had a bold idea to make the world's first feature-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Today, that sounds cute. At the time, it sounded insane. A full-length cartoon was such a crazy gamble that Hollywood insiders called it Disney's folly. They were sure it was going to ruin him. Walt's own wife and brother tried to talk him out of it, but Disney believed in the project, so he went all in. He and his brother, Roy Disney, mortgaged their homes to help fund the production. The studio took out loan after loan, stretching to the brink of collapse. Midway through production, Snow White ran massively over budget. It ended up costing $1.5 million, an unheard of amount in the 1930s. There were moments when Walt couldn't make payroll and was begging bankers for one more loan. He was literally risking his family's house on this animated fairy tale. Finally, in late 1937, with Walt Disney's personal finances going to zero, Snow White premiered. What happened? It received a standing ovation from the audience and went on to become the highest grossing film of its time. It validated Walt's crazy gamble 1,000 times over, and it gave birth to the Disney empire that we know today. But imagine if it had failed. Walt Disney would have been financially ruined. He knew that. Yet he was willing to take the chance because he so passionately believed in the art of animation. His risk wasn't just about money. It was about proving that animation could move people's hearts, and it did. The lesson here for us is sometimes the world calls your dream folly until you prove them wrong. If your conviction is that strong, you might have to put everything on the line. That's sometimes what it takes to build something that outlasts you. Number 6, Oprah Winfrey, reinventing at the pinnacle of success. Oprah Winfrey was already a multimillionaire media queen when she decided to take one of the biggest risks of her career. In 2011, at age 57, Oprah walked away from her phenomenally successful daytime talk show, the #1 show for 25 years, to launch her own cable network, OWN. Think about that. She voluntarily gave up a sure thing. Her show was a money printing machine to start a new venture from scratch. And the launch of OWN was rough. In its first year, Oprah's network struggled so badly it lost over $100 million and was bleeding viewership. Critics called it Oprah's flop. Her reputation took a huge hit for the first time in decades. She was kept out of Time's most influential list that year. Oprah herself went on TV and confessed, "Had I known it was this difficult, I might have done something else." This is Oprah Winfrey, one of the most confident, capable people on the planet, admitting that self-doubt had crept in. That's how intense the pressure had gotten for her. She invested not just her money, but her name, her legacy into OWN, and it looked like a very public failure. But here's the thing about Oprah. She doesn't give up. Instead of folding, she doubled down too. In 2012, she took over as CEO of OWN, retooled the programming, and partnered with people who could bring fresh content like filmmaker Tyler Perry. Slowly but surely, the network's fortunes reversed. By 2013, OWN was turning a profit and climbing in its ratings. Today, OWN is a success and an extension of Oprah's vision, but it exists only because Oprah was willing to risk her enormous success to grow even further. She could have coasted on her talk show into comfortable semi-retirement. Instead, she essentially said, "I'm going to bet my empire on the chance to empower more people in a bigger way." So for us, the takeaway is that even at the top, growth requires risk. You're never too successful to challenge yourself. Oprah had everything to lose, and that's exactly why she had to try. Number 7, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, from $7 to $7 Productions. Today, Dwayne The Rock Johnson is a global movie star and entrepreneur, but in 1995, he was just a 22-year-old kid with a failed dream. He'd spent his youth training to be a professional football player. That dream collapsed when he got cut from the Canadian Football League. Suddenly, he had no team, no career, and only $7 to his name. Literally $7 in his pocket when he flew home to Florida. He sank into depression living in his parents' tiny apartment, feeling like he'd let everyone down. But in that rock bottom moment, Johnson made a decision. He refused to be defined by failure. With only $7, he looked in the mirror and told himself 2 things. I'm broke as hell, and one day I won't be. He pivoted to a new path he knew, pro wrestling, his family's business. Even there, success wasn't instant. He started as a nobody in dingy arenas, faced the crowds jeering at him, chanting, "Rocky sucks," and paid his dues with countless bumps and bruises. But he poured his heart into it with a ferocious drive, motivated by that memory of having nothing. In a few years, The Rock became the biggest name in WWE. Then guess what? He risked it all again. At the peak of his wrestling fame, he decided to pursue acting, a field where so many wrestlers had failed. Hollywood was skeptical. He's a muscle action guy, not a real actor, they said. Johnson had to prove himself all over from scratch. He took roles that paid a fraction of his WWE income, trained with acting coaches, and hustled. But slowly, film by film, he built a new reputation. Now he's the highest paid actor in the world, with blockbuster franchises and his own production company called $7 Productions in honor of that humble beginning. The Rock story illustrates the power of reinvention and just work ethic. He risked failure twice, once when he had nothing, once when he had everything, and both times it moved him to new heights. His mantra is, always be the hardest worker in the room, and he lives it. So ask yourself, are you willing to outwork everyone and risk starting over in order to live your vision? Number 8, Colonel Harlan Sanders, never too late to risk it all. Not all big dreamers are young. Harlan Sanders, better known as Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC, was 65 years old when he embarked on the riskiest venture of his life. Up to that point, Sanders' life had been marked by failure and frustration. He had been a farmhand, a soldier, a railroad worker, a lawyer, very briefly, a gas station operator. He kept losing jobs or businesses due to fights and fires, the depression, you name it. In his 60s, he ran a small restaurant attached to a motel in Kentucky where he served fried chicken using a recipe that he'd perfected. But then an interstate highway opened that bypassed his restaurant and he had to shut it down. At an age when most people retire, Sanders looked at his almost empty bank account and saw one last chance. He had a great fried chicken recipe. What if he franchised it to restaurants around the country? So he hit the road, living out of his car, going door to door to diners and cafes to pitch them adding on his Kentucky Fried Chicken to their menu. He was rejected again and again and again. In fact, by his own count, 1,009 restaurants said no before he finally got his first yes. 1,009 rejections. Most people couldn't handle 100 rejections, let alone 10 times that. But the Colonel kept driving, kept pitching. Finally, in 1952, one restaurant in Utah agreed to sell Sanders' chicken. It was a hit. Slowly, deal by deal, Sanders built a franchise network. And by 1964, KFC had grown to 600 locations, and Colonel Sanders sold the company for $2 million, which is about $15 million today. Not a bad retirement fund for a guy who's been barely scraping by. And the brand kept exploding globally way long after. Colonel Sanders became an unlikely celebrity with his face still on every KFC bucket to this day. The lesson here for us is clear. It's never too late to chase your dream, and it's never too late to fail one more time if it brings that failure a little bit closer to your success. Sanders had every excuse to resign himself to a quiet old age. Instead, he risked his small savings and his pride on a crazy idea, and it made history. So whatever age or stage you're at, if you're still breathing, there's still time to bet on yourself. And number 9, Tyler Perry. This is 6. Number 9, Tyler Perry, fighting through failure after adventure. Tyler Perry is one of the most successful writer, producer, actors in Hollywood today, but his early journey was a trial by fire. In 1992, a young Tyler Perry had saved up $12,000 while working odd jobs. He poured every penny of it into producing his first stage play in Atlanta, I Know I've Been Changed. Perry was sure that this play, based on his own painful experience, would resonate with his audience. He rented a small 200-seat theater, scraped together a cast, and prayed for a good turnout. Opening night, only 30 people showed up. The show bombed. Tyler Perry's entire $12,000 was gone in a flash, and he had nothing to show for it. He was devastated. That kind of failure might make you quit on your dream for good, right? Not him. Perry took odd jobs again as a waiter, a bill collector, slowly saved that money, and tried again to stage the play. It flopped again. He tried again and again from 1992 until 1998. Every single time he put on the show, it failed to attract a crowd. 6 years of persistence, 6 years of losing money and sleeping in seedy motels, even living out of his car when he couldn't afford to pay rent. He reached the edge of giving up. His mother pleaded with him to get a real job. But Tyler Perry says, I thought I had failed, but the truth is I never really failed because I didn't stop. Each version of the play taught him something new, a better joke here, a tighter scene there. In 1998, he tried one last time. He changed his marketing strategy, promoting the play through local churches and the Black community in Atlanta. This time, the word caught fire. The show sold out for 8 nights straight. Tyler Perry finally had his breakthrough. His blend of his humor and his faith and raw honesty struck a chord, and it launched an entertainment empire for him. Within a few years, he was making moves, writing best-selling books, eventually building his own 330-acre film studio, and today, Tyler Perry is a billionaire. But he'd be the first to tell you that the foundation of his success was failure, repeated, soul-crushing failure that he refused to let crush his spirit. So if you're struggling and it feels like you're banging your head against the wall, remember Tyler in that car, homeless but unyielding. Sometimes the darkest hour really is just before you're done. Now it's your turn. Most people never even get to this point, but you did. You showed up, you listened, and now you're ready to make a move. It's time to take all this inspiration and turn it into action. Think about the one story here that resonated with you the most, the one that made your heart beat a little bit faster. Hold on to that feeling because that's your sign. That's your inner hero saying it's go time. No more excuses, no more waiting for the right moment. You create that moment. Bet on yourself. Start today. To watch the incredible story of Walt Disney, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there. Walt Disney was fired for lacking creativity, lost his first company to bankruptcy, and got rejected 300 times trying to fund Disneyland. But he refused to quit.